Announcements by the presiding officer.
Honorable members, I have received requests for leave of absence from today's sitting from Assemblyman Fali Augustine, Assemblyman Wayne Clark, and Councillor Orlando Kerr. The leave requested is granted.
Assembly bills are sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I stand to lay the papers for Tobago House of Assembly monthly budget report as at the end of November 2023 and Tobago House of Assembly monthly budget report as at the end of December 2023.
Can I just, on a point of clarification, ask why the long delay? Because we have November, December, but we are in March. So we're missing January and February.
Unfortunately, Madam Presiding Officer, I cannot answer that question at this moment. Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy will have to be the respondent of that question. Thank you.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Committee, Select Committees, Chief Secretaries' questions, questions to secretaries, questions for oral answer.
My apologies, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
Presiding Officer, I rise on Standing Order 24, and I just seek your indulgence with respect to written questions and the inordinate delay in receiving responses. I don't know if the Leader of Assembly Business can give this House an explanation as to why there are questions languishing over a year.
That could be, please channel that question through the Clerk of the House and she will do follow-up. Question number 108, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 108 to the Secretary of Education, Research and Technology, Assemblyman Zarisha Hackett.
Assemblyman Hackett.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, unfortunately, I've only just seen this question.
Wow.
I saw the other questions on the order paper, but I didn't see this particular question. I am going to ask that I may be allowed to answer the other question and pull together a response to this question, if time permits, in this sitting.
So you would submit the questions, the answer to the question during this sitting?
Yes, I'll stand again and for oral answer, but I really was not prepared. I am only now seeing this question, and I would love to respond to it, please.
Okay, we actually have a standing order that provides for that to happen, so we would accede your request. The response to question would be given within this sitting.
Yes, please.
Question 109, Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 109 to the Secretary, Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transport, Councillor Boris.
Is Councillor Boris here? I have not received any requests for leave. Leader of Assembly Business, can you inform the House?
Madam Presiding Officer, Councillor Boris indicated that she'd be late for this sitting. She had an emergency this morning.
Thank you.
She should be here momentarily.
Leader of Assembly Business.
You're welcome.
Question 110, Minority Councillor. Well, I'm seeing that it's addressed also to Councillor Boris, so we would await her arrival and we would come back to your questions. Okay? Question 119, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I would be noting, I would like to take the councillor to the privileges because this is very important business and we have absolutely no excuse on file. And we have 3 important questions for this councillor, so we would be filing a motion of privileges. Question 119 to the Secretary of Education, Research and Technology.
Assemblyman Zarisha Hackett.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. In their ongoing commitment to assist in the hydrocarbon spill cleanup, the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, or TEMA, in collaboration with the Environmental Management Authority, EMA, and the Institute of Marine Affairs, IMA, conducted comprehensive air quality testing and facility inspections of buildings in the affected area. These measures included ensuring that both Scarborough Secondary School and the Lambo Anglican Primary School not only met but surpassed the recommended safety standards. Utilizing automated air monitoring equipment set up at Shore Park, the O3 ozone reading registered at 29 the day before the reopening, which signified a favorable condition and indicated that the environment was safe enough to reopen schools. Since the EMA and the IMA have been entrusted with environmental impact assessments and monitoring, providing crucial scientific data to guide containment and cleanup efforts, the Division of Education, Research and Technology relied upon their expertise to make that decision. Therefore, the minority leader's use of the words unsafe and hazardous misrepresent the facts as provided by these 3 reputable organizations. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, follow up.
Presiding Officer, is the Secretary, can the Secretary confirm whether bringing our children into such a space that they had to go home back, exposed to hazardous bio-waste, exposed to unhealthy environment, is that a responsible thing of a responsible Secretary for Education?
Can you repeat the question?
Does the Secretary believe the action undertaken by her division to bring students back into an environment where it was proven that the air quality was unhealthy, is that a responsible thing?
Assemblyman Zarisha Hackett.
Madam Presiding Officer, there is a difference between air quality and one's ability to tolerate a particular stench. That is the same concern we have with seaweed piling up on that coastline from time to time. Air quality as proven, and I think the minority leader again is misrepresenting the facts. The TEMA, the EMA, and the IMA again confirmed that the O3 ozone reading registered at 29, and that data indicates again that signified a favorable condition and indicated that the environment was safe enough to open schools. As Secretary, after seeing the concerns of the PTA, I acquiesced and I asked my division for us to monitor again the conditions, and we did some comprehensive deep cleaning and reopened the following week. So I am not certain that we're using the words air quality in the accurate sense of that term. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, follow up.
The fact that the students had to be sent home after being called out, this is the issue we're dealing with, and I want the Secretary to pointedly answer whether she agrees that such an action, bringing the students back into a situation where the PTA had to complain and they had to acquiesce and send them home for another week, whether that was responsible.
Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Education, Research and Technology are not experts in this particular field, and so relied heavily on the experts of that field. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, follow up.
Is the Secretary willing to compensate parents who are still complaining about their children based on that exposure being ill?
Assemblyman
The Secretary
Teresa
of
Hackett.
Education is not responsible for the hydrocarbon spill. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
But the Secretary of
Assemblyman,
Education...
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, kindly have your seat. We have 3 follow-up questions, and you have exhausted. Any follow-up questions you can submit. You can...
Other secretaries in here, and I have more questions to the Secretary.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, are you challenging the chair's decision?
I think for consideration.
And I am saying that you can submit any other follow-up questions to be asked at a subsequent sitting. Question 120. No, person is here. Okay, question 120 is to Assemblyman Augustine, who is not here, Minority Councillor. These questions would go over to the next sitting of the House. Assemblyman Zorisha Hackett, can you state whether Councillor Tashia Boris would be present with us this morning?
So may I have the opportunity to at least message the councillor to find out.
Sure. You can step out and do so. Given that the secretary is deputized, is her deputy here or assistant secretary here to answer her question as per Standing Order 26.3? No? Given that we don't have a response as yet, and we don't have the Assistant Secretary present with us either, according to Standing Order 26.3, on the manner of asking and answering questions, there can be a request for postponement. Leader of Assembly Business.
Standing to now answer the question that was deferred earlier.
Oh, yes. Are you ready to answer?
I am going to try my best, Madam Presiding Officer. I really want to.
I would have Assemblyman Morris pose the question to you, and you would answer.
Yes, I'll try my best. And Madam Presiding Officer, with your leave, if there are any elements of the question that I'm unable to answer, may I defer to the next sitting, please? Thank you.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
The Secretary is not properly prepared. I prefer that we have the question deferred and we treat with the matter when she's fully prepared.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Question, that would be question 108, would be deferred to the next sitting. Would you be requesting postponement of questions posed to Councillor Tashia Boris, Leader of Assembly Business, as per Standing Order 26.3?
Order, I'm learning still. I would love to request a leave as per Standing Order 26.3 for Councillor Tashia Boris so she can answer those questions in a subsequent sitting. Thank you.
Request granted. Madam Clerk.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motion relating to the business of the Assembly, and move by a secretary or assistant secretary, public business, Executive Council, motion.
Assemblyman Dr. Faith P. Israel, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Thank you and good morning to the members of the House. Good morning to those who are viewing online and in person. And a special good morning to the residents of my electoral district of Bell Garden, Glamorgan, and to all who are listening. I stand this morning to raise this motion with really mixed feelings. So let me read the motion at this point so that we are all clear about what it says, and that would allow me to share why I have mixed feelings about it today. The motion reads, whereas the Litter Act 1973 aims to prevent and control littering in public spaces through the enforcement of laws and penalties, and the Environmental Management Act 2000 holds polluters accountable for the cost of their polluting activities. And whereas Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory to several multinational environmental agreements and treaties governing waste management to minimize pollution. And whereas the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 delegates areas of responsibilities including tourism, health services, environment, and community development. Be it resolved that all divisions develop division-specific waste management policies and plans to align with those of the Public Health Department of the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. And be it further resolved that the residents within the communities of Tobago, alongside the Tobago House of Assembly, commit to implementing strategies to ensure that the island remains clean. And be it further resolved that corporate entities in Tobago be engaged in a strategic campaign for a cleaner Tobago through their commitment to corporate social responsibility and the economic development of a sustainable and environmentally safe Tobago economy. There's an African proverb that says, he who doesn't clean his mouth before breakfast always complains that the food is sour. Let me repeat. He that doesn't clean his mouth before breakfast always complains that the food is sour. There's a Japanese proverb that says, as waterfowls move on to other places, they pass through without dirtying the water or making waves. As waterfowls move on to other places, they pass through without dirtying the water or making waves. Or we can come to one that I think we all are very familiar with. And I'll be honest and indicate that I thought for a very long time that this was a part of the Bible, Madam Presiding Officer, where it says that cleanliness is next to godliness. And it is only while preparing that I started Googling, because I wanted Madam Presiding Officer to be able to stand here and quote what part of the Bible it came from. I recognized that it was actually a reference that was made by an English cleric, John Wesley, in 1978, according to Mr. Google. And that in 1778, my apologies, and that it was not actually a part of the King James Version that we are all very familiar with. And that is why we are here, Madam Presiding Officer. And that is why I have mixed feelings. Because I know that as a Tobagonian, we have all been raised to be clean. As a Tobagonian, we've been all raised to show that level of cleanliness. Even if we are coming from families or communities that may be the humblest, we have always been clean. Now, the motion starts, Madam Presiding Officer, with us identifying only some of the legislation in Trinidad and Tobago that speaks to us being clean. But I want us to step back as Tobagonians and recognize that laws really are the benchmark for the absolute minimum that we should be doing. So that is why it says, if you do whatever, this will be the penalty. The law isn't saying that is where you should aim to not be penalized. The law is saying this is the bottom of the barrel that you should go. And therefore, because you have hit the bottom of the barrel, we will use the arms of the state to penalize you. I personally think that those of us who are proud Tobagonians are better than that. However, Madam Presiding Officer, having been in this seat as Secretary with responsibility for health, wellness, and social protection, which includes a significant chunk of the part of the state that is responsible for waste management, is responsible for health. It is responsible for the link between waste management, for example, and health. You know, we talk about having rats and roaches running around, and when that happens, it actually causes medical problems. So there's that interconnection. It has been very difficult for me to accept, Madam Presiding Officer, that the level of, and excuse my language, downright nastiness that we seem to be seeing throughout the island is actually happening. Because I do not believe that this is cleanliness is next to godliness, which is what we all grew up learning and understanding. So we have all of the laws. I would admit, Madam Presiding Officer, that the Department of Public Health, which is a department with responsibility for the public health components, and I'll take this second to differentiate what I mean by that. We usually think, Madam Presiding Officer, of medicine when we are thinking about health, meaning you as an individual, you get sick, you go to the health center, hospital, or whatever to get treatment. That is medicine. That is almost an individual way of either making you well after you've gotten sick, or kind of preventing you from getting sick before. Public health, on the other hand, though, Madam Presiding Officer, has to do with the collective responsibility of ensuring that the communities that we live in stay healthy. And that is why the Department of Public Health at the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection has responsibility for the landfill. And yes, it is a landfill at Studley Park. As a matter of fact, we can boast that it is probably the most effective and efficiently run landfill on the island, in the country. It is. With a view, of course. With a view, certainly. That is why the Department of Public Health is responsible collectively for managing waste on the island. That is why the department is responsible for our public health inspectors, which includes those that go out to our food facilities and so forth. And let me just put a plug. My lead public health inspector yesterday warned me to not be upset or to expect some calls, because they have been targeting, looking at a couple high-end, high-name institutions that may have to shut down if they are not complying with the public health regulations, yes. That is why we also do things like vector control. So you go out and you get the rodents and the mosquitoes and that kind of stuff. Because collectively, when we in the Department of Public Health do those things, it allows you, the citizen, to be healthy because you now do not need to deal with the issues that are associated with uncleanliness, untidiness, and so forth. By no means, Madam Presiding Officer, is the department perfect. We have a landfill that is stretching continually as we speak, and with the issue of the hydrocarbon spill, I am actually going to stop here to publicly congratulate and publicly thank the officers that are in charge and that function at the landfill, because they have been making magic up there to be able to accommodate the hydrocarbons and so forth that we are pulling out of the sea and that we are pulling out of the beach fronts and so forth. They've been able to do that. Of course, as I said before, it is not perfect. We still have several areas where the garbage collection is not the way it should be, where we still need to work out having smaller vehicles, for example, to go into those areas. It's not perfect, and by no means am I blaming anyone at the Department of Public Health, but it is a process that is a continual process. As a matter of fact, I am very aware, because I was actually part of the division of the then Health and Social Services, where in 2010, a waste characterization study was actually done, Madam Presiding Officer. And the aim of spending the money back then, which included a contractor, getting a weighbridge, and all kind of story, was to identify the kinds of waste that were coming into the landfill, to therefore create a comprehensive waste management policy and plan for the island. And when I got here in 2021, that did not happen as yet. But it is something that we are continually working on. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to improve on the white waste collection. What is white waste collection? That is where you pick up the larger, bulkier types of waste. So the old fridge and the old stove and the couch that you're not using anymore and so forth. That is where we are able to pick up those things. We started at the division with it being done annually, really around Christmas time, Madam Presiding Officer, because that was the point where most of the people of Tobago bought new items and then threw out items because they just purchased new things. We implemented a policy where we started doing that quarterly. So every couple months you would see the notice that we are coming around to your area, this is the particular date, this is the particular time, and so forth. We've recognized, though, Madam Presiding Officer, that even that seems to not be sufficient. Because somehow I am not sure whether Tobagonians are just continually buying items, or, and that might be a good thing, or is it that Tobagonians have been storing up all their old items forever and ever and now just bringing them out? Because it seems as if after we are done with white waste pickup every quarter, it seems like right after we are done, there is white waste again on the sides of the street. So one of the policies that will be a new policy of the division will be to have a rolling white waste pickup. And what that means don't just put it out, please. Every month we will identify this is where we are coming, this is what time we're coming by you, so you can put out your waste at that specific time. So you do not necessarily need to wait for the quarter to pick up your waste. May I also indicate, Madam Presiding Officer, that even at this point, without the rollout of that new policy within the division, you can call the Department of Public Health, the landline number 639-1433, 639-1433, and you can say to them, I have an old fridge, or you could come and pick it up, please. And the person on the other end would say to you, well, don't put it out just yet. We're going to come by you next week, so that you know exactly when that will happen. You may also email publichealth@gov.tt to provide that information. But as I said, Madam Presiding Officer, the process is an ongoing one. The process is one that allows us to try something, evaluate it, see whether it is working, and now that we've recognized the deficiencies, we will and we can change it to suit. So those are some of the things we are working on, Madam Presiding Officer, within the division specifically, to help us maintain this cleanliness is next to godliness type of arrangement on the island. It's important to note, though, and this is why this motion was raised, that, and remember I said at the beginning, that what is in the legislation is bare minimum, and we should aim to do way more than bare minimum. Because the fact is that our public health department is actually working with, as in the legislation that governs the public health department, is actually a piece of legislation that is, what, 100 years old? 1915 Public Health Ordinance, yes. 1915 is the document that we are working with. It's the legislation that we are working with. Yes, there have been a few amendments as you go along, but even those amendments were 50 and 75 years ago. So that tells you something. It's one of the reasons why it is so critical for us to, again, work together. Because when you look at, for example, some of the fees that are associated with the different items, the fees are ridiculously minuscule. At $50. And now what they've done is basically say it is whatever was then multiplied by 4. So if it was $50 multiplied by 4, it is now $200, Madam Presiding Officer. What my public health inspectors and so forth are telling me is that they would go through the whole process, and it actually is a very tedious process to get people to get to the point where you are charged this fee, and then the person just take out the $200 from their pocket and say, hey, and continue with life as normal. Let me say though, Madam Presiding Officer, that I need to plug the issue of autonomy right here, and let me explain why. In Trinidad, there are different municipalities in Trinidad, meaning, you know, the city of Port of Spain, the different boroughs, Arima, and, you know, San Fernando, and those things. And those municipalities are actually governed by the Municipal Corporations Act. And one of the things, as is outlined in that act, is Part 10 that speaks about bylaws. And allow me to read, Madam Presiding Officer. 221(1). In addition to any other bylaws, rules, or regulations within a council, which a council is expressly authorized to make under this act, a council may make such bylaws, rules, and regulations as to it seems proper for the good rule and government of the municipality, and for the prevention and suppression of nuisances not already punishable in a summary matter by virtue of any written law. What does that mean? The municipalities in Trinidad, the cities and the boroughs and so forth, they can actually make bylaws that will govern how those things function. So, for example, a couple years ago we were hearing, I think it was Arima, that somebody in Arima was saying that they are now going around and they are cutting, if they are overgrown parcels of land, they are going and they are cutting it and they are then sending the bill to the owner because they have the authority to make a bylaw that says that they can do that. And they have the authority to make a bylaw that says they can do that and that they can now charge the landowner $2,000 or whatever the figure is. The Tobago House of Assembly does not have the authority to do that. So, Madam Presiding Officer, even though those who are in local government in Trinidad speak about the fact that the Tobago House of Assembly Act is a more superior act to what they do and the kind of local government that they run, Madam Presiding Officer, we still are unable to do something as simple as that. So my public health officers have to sit and have to refer to the 1915 documents when they are treating with nuisances on the island. And that is why I decided to make that point very clear, Madam Presiding Officer. Because very often my very colleagues call and message and tell me, why public health ain't go on? Look, this man over there doing so. Why all he ain't going on? And I have to say to them, it is not as simple as you assume it is. Because their hands really are bounded by this 1950 piece of legislation. And that is why the Public Health Department, Madam Presiding Officer, has actually said to me that the method they use, because it is the only thing that they are able to do to maintain their sanity, is to try to work with the individual to try to get them to a point of better. Because we cannot rely on the legislation. There is one piece of legislation, though, Madam Presiding Officer, that we can rely on, and that is the Litter Act, which is a relatively new piece of legislation. And the Litter Act allows for example, and I'll read, a person is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $4,000 or to imprisonment for 6 months, who throw down, drops, or otherwise deposits and leaves any litter in or into any premises owned or occupied by another without the consent of the other person, and so forth. So you see the difference in fees that we're talking about. The Litter Act allows us to start charging thousands of dollars for littering. Now, the funny part about that, Madam Presiding Officer, is that within the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, there is an entity that is there that you think should have the authority overall to do this. And that is the Litter Eradication Program, LEP. Let me state, Madam Presiding Officer, that one of the promises that was made when we got to this point, as in when we became the executive of the THA, it is to finally regularize those individuals who are employed in that LEP program. And for those who are looking, the LEP program, those are the ones who you see them with the litter pickers because they are picking up litter. And you see them putting the litter into green bags, and then you see another vehicle coming and picking up the green bags after the fact. Those are the Litter Eradication Program individuals. But you know what is funny, Madam Presiding Officer? When I started being employed with the Division of then Health and Social Services in 2007. That was the time where this litter eradication program started, around that time. And I actually remember one of the first meetings that I attended, and at that point I was a public health specialist. That was my official title within the division, having just come back from school, fresh, think I know what I'm doing. You know, you just get a doctoral degree, you know, so I'm proud. Fresh. And I came back and I walked into that meeting, Madam Presiding Officer, and there were the public officers on one side who had conceptualized this litter eradication program to include something that the Litter Act allows for, which are litter wardens, which are the people who could go out and actually give you the ticket. They are precepted people could go out and give you a ticket for littering, the $4,000, Madam Presiding Officer. That was the original plan of this program way back then, because the law allows for those people to report to a public health inspector as part of the reporting arrangement and so forth. But I walked into that meeting and I actually heard some of the public health leaders indicate that, well, you see me and this, I not, well, you leave me out of this. Because they recognized at that point it was actually a program that was not going to meet the basic requirements to be able to allow them to have litter wardens, because there are minimum requirements for litter wardens. And they assumed, or they thought, or they presumed at that point that the program was really just an opportunity for the then politicians to hire people just before an election. And that is why, Madam Presiding Officer, we are in 2024, and there are individuals who are working in that program who have never been allowed to go on holiday, never take a sick leave, never take nothing. And they are at this point wondering, because you realize we're talking about 2007 and we are now at 2024. Some of them are about to hit the 60-year mark and wondering, Madam Presiding Officer, what will happen to them. We have made the commitment, Madam Presiding Officer, and my technical staff, my legal staff and so forth have already begun doing the necessaries to ensure that those individuals are, even if it didn't happen then, even if it didn't happen before now, become dignified members who actually are employed in a way where they can say, you know what, me and feel like going work today, and they don't have to worry about not getting paid for that day simply because they did not, because they could take a casual day, or they could actually get sick, they could get a headache and decide, you know what, I really can't make it today, let me send in a sick leave, Madam Presiding Officer. And part of the restructuring of that, Madam Presiding Officer, will include us also allowing those individuals who may have the minimum requirements to be litter wardens to then move over to that side of the litter eradication program. And then, Madam Presiding Officer, we will truly have a program in Tobago the way it was originally conceptualized umpteen years ago by the public health professionals who were around at that time, before, dare I say, the politicians came and made a full mess of that program. Madam Presiding Officer, my aim is to not be here for a very long time, but I will simply state that the part of this motion asks us for each of my colleagues who are within the various divisions to work collectively to ensure that we really do get closer to that cleanliness is next to godliness. That means that education has its role, ComDev has its role, Agri has its role, tourism has its role, and so forth. And I would allow my colleagues to speak about what they see themselves contributing to this so that we can get to that place of cleanliness is next to godliness. It also, Madam Presiding Officer, includes us saying to corporate society that we need you to be a part of this as well. The government cannot take full responsibility for everything that happens on the island. So what can you do? Well, let me step back. Corporate Tobago, you can start by, Madam Presiding Officer, and I am saying this as calmly and as politely as I can, you can start by understanding the fact that the Department of Public Health, though we are responsible for waste management on the island, the garbage collection mechanism within the island that the state pays for is actually for households. Garbage collection paid for by the state is really not for corporate or private entities. So when you unpack your goods and you leave all your box them outside pan the step or pan the sidewalk, and we come and we pick them up, that is really us doing you a favor. And it is not really our responsibility to do that. You can very easily take a quick drive up to our scenic landfill. It is free. We do not charge corporate citizens to dump into the landfill, so you can drive up and you can say to the security guard, I have this particular type of waste, and you will be directed as to what part of the landfill that you can go to deliver your waste, and that in and of itself would help us treat with some of the issues that we are seeing in our urbanish kind of areas like Scarborough and Crown Point, where those who are business owners are not taking up that responsibility. How else can you partner with us? You can adopt a region, even if that region is the area right in front of your business. Excuse me. Adopt a hotspot. And I must compliment my public health again, because they have actually been going around to some of the places where we are seeing people just dumping things indiscriminately and cleaning those. Let me take the opportunity though quickly, Madam Presiding Officer, to give an example of how communities, how all of us can actively be a part of fixing this problem. Excuse me. I will use my district. There's a particular group in my district, Madam Presiding Officer, who took it upon themselves to build a communal bin. Now really, we are phasing out the communal bins, because the idea is that the trucks should come to each household to pick up the household waste. But this group, as part of their activities, created a communal bin. The communal bin, of course, is within a residential area. There happens to also be a business in that residential area, and the business owner has been indiscriminately dumping their stuff in and around the community bin. The community called during the last white waste in December collection. I know for a fact that the trucks made 2 stops before the end of December there. How did I know that? Because I passed one day and I saw the garbage. I took a picture. I said, nah, let me call my public health. When all you're coming up here, this doesn't make sense. They came, cleaned it out. A couple of days later, I happened to be passing again, and I'm thinking, nah, man. I took a picture again, and then I went back and compared the picture that I took first to the picture that I took that day, and I realized, wait, it's different garbage.
Member,
again,
you have 5 minutes.
That's all I need, Madam Presiding Officer. Thank you. Again, I said to my public health people, I know the truck went up there already. Send them back again, please. The truck went back again. We get to the rollover of the year, so January morning, bright and early, and I get a picture on my phone from a resident up there, and it's full of garbage again. And I called my public health people, Madam Presiding Officer, and I said earlier, oh gosh, I know, it's ridiculous now. Send back the truck up there, please. The truck went back, they cleaned. The residents, now, those who did the garbage, those who did the bin, took flowers from their homes, big flower pots, and put the flower pot around the garbage can, around the communal bin, so that, you know, it's a bin, yes, in the middle, but we're nice, we're pretty, you know. And then the businessman brought garbage again and moved the goodly people flower pot them to throw his garbage. And I got a call from a resident up there saying, Dr. Faith, we know what's happening, but Mr. So just bring back a garbage. And Mr. somebody else getting a wheelbarrow and we carrying the garbage back up by he. And they did, Madam Presiding Officer, just that. They picked up back the garbage and they dumped it right in front of his property. And then they called the police, so that if there was any kind of altercation, the police would already be on spot to treat with it. Madam Presiding Officer, this is what we are talking about. This is why this motion is really not about us following the rules in terms of using the rules and the laws as our bare minimum. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobagonians are clean people, or at least we were. We used to be the kind that house very, very clean, and then when we hear a neighbor coming or somebody coming, we pass the broom one more time, just to make sure. Just to make sure. That is the kind of Tobago that I hope we will go back to. But not just for our homes, Madam Presiding Officer, but for the entire island. That is why I'm asking, Madam Presiding Officer, that all of us, the divisions, that all of us, the residents, that all of us, corporate entity, that all of us who are proud Tobagonians really do everything in our power to ensure that we keep that cleanliness is next to godliness mantra. With that, Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this motion that is standing in my name be moved. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question proposed is, whereas the Litter Act 1973 aims to prevent and control littering in public spaces through the enforcement of laws and penalties, and the Environmental Management Act 2000 holds polluters accountable for the cost of their polluting activities. And whereas Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory to several multinational environmental agreements and treaties governing waste management to minimize pollution, and whereas the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 designates areas of responsibilities including tourism, health services, environment, and community development. Be it resolved that all divisions develop division-specific waste management policies and plans to align with those of the Public Health Department of the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. And be it further resolved that the residents within the communities of Tobago, alongside the Tobago House of Assembly, commit to implementing strategies to ensure the island remains clean. And be it further resolved that corporate entities in Tobago engage in a strategic campaign for a cleaner Tobago through their commitment to corporate social responsibility and the economic development of a sustainable and environmentally safe Tobago economy. Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and let me take this opportunity to wish my colleagues all special extended Holy Easter. Happy Easter to my colleagues, Pastor Baines in particular, and and the rest of the wider community of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, true to the current atmosphere, which is one of holiness and humility and all that, I really plan to reserve my presentation. But to do that today would be an injustice to the people of Tobago. Because, Madam Presiding Officer, while I sat and while I waited with bated breath to hear of a policy, what I got was simply what we are debating: waste. Absolute waste. Because I am asking myself, where is the policy? And I challenge any of my colleagues coming after me to tell me what is the policy. Because you see, Madam Presiding Officer, one thing this administration is good at is hypocrisy. And I would expose their hypocrisy today. Because not too long, we would have debated a motion of similar nature, one that dealt with styrofoam by a previous administration. And Madam Presiding Officer, I would share with their colleagues some of the presentations, some of the comments of the two sitting members, one sitting as Chief Secretary and the other as Deputy Chief Secretary. And this styrofoam motion was just for the edification of Tobagonians, was to deal with the environment and ensuring that we provide a more sustainable way of utilizing and waste management when it comes to styrofoam, because we know of some of the debilitating effects of styrofoam. And therefore, that motion came to the House. And the first issue they took with that motion was one of problem identification. And here's the member who's moving the motion telling the House at this time, Madam Presiding Officer, I recently heard a very wise man say, define the problem properly and solution will present itself. Madam Presiding Officer, and I ask this secretary in her wind-up, please define the problem, because you were all over the place. And I would really like to know what exactly are we cheating with and what is the policy to rectify the issue. And I would also share with the member what policy creation and policy development involves. Because you see, she lectured the previous administration about how you create policy. And she went on to talk about consultation. But did you hear she mention anything about consultation here today? Did you hear her talk about going to the highways and byways, talking to the man on the street, as she said then? The sauceman and the food vendor? What we heard was that she was going to lock down certain places. But did you have the consultation? And when and where was the consultation? And hear what she's saying about consultation. When I entered politics, Madam Presiding Officer, I did so with the commitment to truly represent the people who elected me. Moreover, to represent all Tobagonians, whether they actually voted for me or not. As a result, the members of the minority bench sought to do some degree of consultation, research, and review before coming to the sitting today. And again, I ask, what consultation did you do? What research did you do? Who did you review this policy? Because you also said in your statement that you were so disappointed because you didn't have a policy document in front of you. And I ask again, where is the policy document guiding this issue of treating with pollution? What is the document? Where is the document? Who informed the document? Where is it? But you see, this administration is very good at telling people they could fix things. But when you give them the opportunity to fix it, they end up doing worse, because by her own admission, she said she understood that there were some challenges since 2007. You understood that even by 2019, there was a need for a solid waste management comprehensive plan. And you have sat here 2 years and almost a half. You have less than 18 months to go. And instead of coming to us with a motion, with a policy, with a plan, you come here with nothing. Vacuous, empty, nothingness. Here. Where is the plan? Where's the policy? And I'm quite disappointed, I must say, Madam Presiding Officer, because you see, the Chief Secretary in his motion went on to tell us about how important it is to have something in front of you, have a plan, have a policy. And here's the Chief Secretary talking about feasibility of the motion. The process should have also included public education campaign. We have to get buy-in from the public, and so we need to begin sensitizing the public. Where's the sensitization? Relax yourself.
Members, please allow the Assemblyman to have his uninterrupted time for presentation.
I realize the Secretary of Education is pretending to be the Secretary of everything, because I've seen her going on tourism.
Assemblyman Morris, please continue your presentation.
But this motion is brought by the Secretary of Health, and one would expect that the Secretary of Health, being an expert in public health, would come here with a public health policy with a comprehensive solid waste management plan or policy. And she came here with absolutely nothing, which is really a dereliction of her duty. And what she's coming here to say is that every division must now make a policy on a framework where there's no foundation. So if you don't have a foundation, how could the pillars stand? How could the Division of Education prepare policy if you don't know what is the overarching framework? How could the could the Secretary of Tourism prepare a policy if she doesn't know what is the overarching framework? Where's the policy? And the fact that we don't have a policy in front of us to discuss means that we are really discussing nothing. And we are wasting time. Precious time that could have been used. There are so many other pressing issues in Tobago. We have an economy that is completely collapsed. We have a tourism sector that is in its worst decaying state. We have an agricultural sector where farmers are complaining day and day. We have farmers protesting outside, can't get it plowed and all kind of thing. And here you bring a motion that, as the Chief Secretary, in his own words, he talked about about a motion being, how the motion must be time bound. But you see, when you bring a motion to the House, this is the Chief Secretary, he said your motion should be measurable. What are we measuring? What exactly are we measuring? There's nothing to measure. Your motion should be time-bound. What is the benchmark? What is the time frame we're working with? Nothing. You said nothing. Your motion should not be generalized. That is your chief secretary. You didn't see a presentation today. Because this is him back then talking about the styrofoam motion and what a motion should, the framework, the structure of a motion, that treating with a serious policy, what it should contain. And this deputy chief secretary who sat right next to him comes and do the absolute opposite. Because this motion is very vague. It is not specific to anything. That is why the secretary was all over the place, because she had not defined the problem properly. The chief secretary goes on to tell us, he said, I will tell you what, Madam Presiding Officer, I would not be lectured on the environment, because this motion talk about EMA, and hear what the chief secretary is saying. And I want Tobagonians to listen to understand the kind of political hypocrites they have elected to manage their affairs. This is the chief secretary who is down friendship now, bulldozing land willy-nilly. He's telling you, I will tell you, Madam Presiding Officer, I would not be lectured on the environment by people who go willy-nilly destroying the environment to build big hotels to satisfy their financiers and their friends. Madam Presiding Officer, is this the same chief secretary who is down Friendship Estate willy-nilly, bulldozing through people roads to give their financiers from Trinidad, Tobago people money?
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, I'm going to caution you against your statements we made in this House.
Madam, I'm just asking the question
I am cautioning you against your statements we made in this House. Please be guided accordingly.
Madam Presiding Officer, these are the words of the Chief Secretary, and I'm simply rephrasing by taking out what he said and now putting it into today's context, which is, we know this administration spoke about EMA. We know they talk about people bulldozing things for financiers, and we are witnessing that very same thing happening right before our very own eyes. Encroaching on people land is $30 million that's going to cost the people of Tobago. Lands that does not belong to them, and the court had to provide an injunction. So, Madam Presiding Officer, like the Chief Secretary, I would not come here and listen to nobody talk about cleanliness when they too are doing the very same thing. They too are disregarding the EMA Act. They are going and build stage without any clearance on the sea. They don't care about the environment. So don't come here and try to chastise other Tobagonians. You should be leading by example. And it's because you are not leading by example why we are seeing this decay. If you were upholding the law, then Tobagonians would uphold the law. But you cannot tell Tobagonians uphold the law when you are not doing it. It's not do like I say and say as I do. You've got to lead by example. And it's only when this administration starts to lead by example, you would see Tobagonians taking a serious change in how they treat with the environment. Because if you don't care to go through a CC and had to have $1.1 million expended unnecessarily, because the law dictates that you get certificate of environmental clearance for developments over 1 kilometer to build a road. And if you don't care to get environmental clearance to go and trouble this shoreline, then what you expect? And how could you chastise people about doing better? Madam Presiding Officer, I have some contributions because I can remind people of what the PNM did. But I just wanted to remind Tobagonians and to demonstrate to Tobagonians the kind of hypocrites that we have in government here in Tobago at this time. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I won't spend much time, but I'll post the rest because they had a lot to say here about why they wouldn't support. And imagine, we all know how detrimental styrofoam is to an economy, to the environment, but they chose not to support that. But today coming to tell Tobagonians about cleanliness, I say hypocrites. Madam Presiding Officer, you know, I heard the Secretary talk about a policy, and yes, there is a policy. There's an overarching national solid waste management policy for Trinidad and Tobago. And how does this work? It works by providing a coherent, comprehensive national framework for solid waste management to include waste diversion, reduction, resource recovery, and recycling over the next decade. So you see, it's clear. There's a period, it's time sensitive, it's measurable, it's specific. Adherence to internal obligations regarding the management of hazardous waste and substances and persistent organic pollutants with reduced risk for future generations. It also includes recycling initiatives, regulatory frameworks so that national companies and small and medium business can operate effectively and efficiently by managing products and materials responsibly throughout its life cycle. It provides national leadership on waste and resource recovery where it is needed and facilitate collaboration with other regional states on pertinent issues. Combats climate change, contribute to sustainability, innovation and employment opportunities. And permit me to pause again. You see how comprehensive this is? The Secretary came here today talking to us like if white waste and bulk waste is the only form of waste that we have to treat with. We are facing a serious climate change challenge. You heard absolutely nothing about that. We have biohazardous waste. This Secretary was one who had the most to say about biohazardous waste. I remember her going up to the old fort and exposing the amount of waste was there. And you know what? When she came into office, it's the same biohazardous waste was being stored and being exposed, left to be exposed up in the old fort, old hospital. Again, hypocrisy. Madam Presiding Officer, what was done before that kept Tobago the clean, green, safe, serene environment under the PNM? Let me share with the Secretary. And she should know because she was the policy and research person in the Division of Health. And if that is what we are getting, the output from someone who was dealing with policy and research, woe be to us in Tobago. Because if that is the depth of the research, if that is the depth of the review, if that is the depth of the proposal, then we are in real trouble. We on this side during our term in office, we dealt with the prevention and reduction of waste production and its harmfulness, the recovery of waste including recycling, reuse or reclamation, and the use of waste as a source of energy. Ensuring that waste is recovered or disposed in a fashion that does not endanger human health. Prohibiting the abandonment, dumping, and controlled disposal of waste. We also was, at the time, the PNM was working on improving public health awareness, surveillance, and waste management. There were engagement. So there was consultation with stakeholders, including internal and external stakeholders, such as health, education, surveillance unit, etc. Education and awareness, solid waste management was also important so that we were able to identify best practices. What is the way forward, Madam Presiding Officer? Tobago is having a greater focus on tourism. And therefore, I would like to suggest some initiatives that I believe will have some value in assisting us when it comes to initiatives regarding sustainable tourism. One, tourism business such as the food establishments can partner with private companies such as HATCO to collect their used cooking oil and have it upcycled so it does not end up in the environment. 2, tourism entities can partner with the UNDP to engage in carbon sequestration projects where plastic bottles can be crushed and mixed with cement. So I'm giving you all some free advice, and made into things like park benches, so you can collaborate, you can have URP partnering and doing these kind of initiatives, and it ensures that plastics do not go back into the environment in its raw state. 3, organic waste material from food outlets and hotel restaurants can be composted and reused in the agricultural sector. That is something we can partner with the agricultural sector and do. 4, I would limit the use of plastic straws. So we go back to that same styrofoam motion. There is some value in that. And then these, because plastic straws and these kind of things end up blowing with the wind and end up in the ocean, which endangers marine animals like turtles. Instead, this is what we can do as a house. We can resolve as a house a policy. We can even create bylaws here to ensure that we deal with things like this so that it does not end up a long-term problem in Tobago. 5, have different bins to collect plastic, organic, and glass. As you've seen outside, when you go to America and you visit your relatives, you know they have 3 different bins. You don't, so you separate your waste right there and then. All is not just thrown into one garbage bag and just dumped into the garbage truck and then goes to the landfill. So what is for recycling goes to recycling, what can be used for crushing and so forth. 6, stepwise improvement and investor attraction. Gradually enhance waste management systems, leveraging progress to attract investors. Explore various financing mechanisms, including co-financing and support from businesses and importers, all aligning with the SDGs. Look for renewable options. Is there anything used regularly by your employees that can be replaced with a reusable option? And you know what is the funny thing? When we discussed the styrofoam, you know they had a lot of suggestions. One of those suggestions the Chief Secretary at that time suggested was the use of cassava, so that the cassava peels could be used in terms of producing bowls, etc., etc. I don't know if they just talk because it sounds good, but 2.5 years later, have the Chief Secretary engaged with his Secretary of Agriculture to really bring this to fruition? So you had this great idea. You came to the styrofoam motion with this great idea. Now that you have been given the opportunity, why not implement it? Excellent idea. But why not put it to use? And I don't know if you all have implementation deficit. Don't know what it is. But I would really implore this administration to put your hands to the wheel. There's work to be done. There are ample Tobagonians willing to work with you. They don't have to support you, but there are people with ideas willing to see Tobago move forward. Work with those people and let us build Tobago. Because you may not have all the ideas, and even when you have the ideas, there are people who might be in a position to help you implement those ideas. So that cassava idea is an excellent idea. And I would put it to the Secretary of Agriculture, perhaps to talk with your Chief Secretary, who seems to know a lot about that process, to perhaps get TATCO running on that. Madam Presiding Officer, 8, simple, go paperless. What is it? And this is what we're talking about policy. When we talk about policy, this is one way.
Member, you have 5 minutes.
Sure, I don't need more than that. This is one way to that the policy framework would influence what happens at the divisional level. Because if the policy is that we're going green, we're going pink, then all divisions will now put systems in place, digitize their systems, so that they can have a paperless arrangement, and that in itself will assist in treating with the solid waste footprints. So, Madam Presiding Officer, perhaps the other members know the policy better than the person who's supposed to create the policy. So I look forward to listening. The rest of the contribution, one member already said, she is the new Secretary of Health, so she has the policy there. So I look forward to hearing her policy. And perhaps the others will also share. But as far as I see it, at this point, there's no policy to consider, and therefore, this motion is a nothing motion. I rest my case. Thank you.
Assemblyman Natasha Charles-Panton, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, as stated in Standing Order 42.7, permit me to read from my contribution, given the nature of the material that I have to present. I would like to thank God for life today, for life, health, and strength, and for taking us all through the members' manuric presentation. Because as we see, he has chosen rabble-rousing as his new profession. Before I start, I want to applaud the technical team at Tractor Pool for attempting to clear the over 300 backlog left by the then PNM administration, and a special thank you to the Chief Secretary for ensuring that he funded the purchase of these new tractors and implements to meet the demands left behind by the previous administration. Yeah? Greetings to all members of the House and to our distinguished guests. Let me take this opportunity to thank my constituents of Bagatelle Bacolet for their continued support as we work together to build the greatest little island on the planet. I stand before you today to address an issue that threatens the very foundation of our island's prosperity and our vision for a sustainable future. The challenge of solid waste management has reached a critical juncture, and it is our duty as leaders and as citizens to confront this problem head-on and forge a path towards a cleaner, greener Tobago. Our island's history of waste management is a story of evolution and adaptation. From the organic waste disposal practices of our Amerindian forebears to the complex systems necessitated by modernization, we have continually sought to balance the needs of our growing population with the preservation of our natural environment. However, the post-World War II era marked a turning point as the influx of imported goods and the rise of a throwaway culture placed unprecedented strain on our waste management infrastructure. Nevertheless, the division has focused on 4 main categories of policies and initiatives that deal with waste management on the island of Tobago. These include integrated waste management, public awareness campaigns, partnerships and collaborations, and research and innovation. Notably, these are crucially guided by and aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the relevant pillars, such as SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, By promoting effective waste management, we contribute to creating sustainable, inclusive, and resilient communities in Tobago. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Implementing waste management policies encourages responsible consumption and production patterns, thereby minimizing resource depletion and environmental degradation. SDG 13, climate action. Proper waste management practices contribute to mitigating climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions from landfills and promoting sustainable alternatives to waste disposal. SDG 15, life on land. Preserving the environment through effective waste management protects terrestrial ecosystems, biodiversity, and natural habitats in Tobago. Today, we find ourselves at a crossroad. The Studley Park landfill, our sole waste disposal facility, is almost at its maximum carrying capacity. It groans under the weight of our collective waste, soon becoming unable to accommodate the ever-increasing volumes generated by our communities. This overburdened site poses significant environmental and health risks, and the recent oil spill that has ravaged our coastline has only exacerbated the problem. As we speak, tons of oil-soaked material have been treated and added to the designated area at the landfill, with more arriving on a daily basis. As a tourism-dependent economy, a culture of cleanliness cannot be underestimated. The mantra of a clean, green, serene Tobago resonates just as strongly today as it did when it first was coined. If we are to realize this current administration's bold vision of transforming Tobago into the greatest little island on the planet, we must lead by example, demonstrating to the world that sustainable waste management is not only possible, but also a catalyst for economic growth and community empowerment. The Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and Sustainable Development has developed a comprehensive plan to tackle this challenge head-on. Central to our strategy is the revival and expansion of the Keep a Clean School Award Program, CACSA. Launched in 2013, this groundbreaking initiative, of which I played a key role in executing, engaged all 52 schools in Tobago, instilling a culture of cleanliness and environmental stewardship among our youth. Though the COVID-19 pandemic temporarily halted its progress, this division is committed to resurrecting and amplifying its impact, working alongside my colleague at the Division of Education, Research and Technology. Under the revitalized CACSA, we will establish the Tobago Environmental Education Collaboration Committee, TEECC, a powerful alliance of NGOs, government agencies, and corporate partners dedicated to managing and supporting the program's implementation. This collaborative approach will ensure that the CACSAP's message of environmental responsibility reaches every corner of our island, from the classroom to the boardroom. But we won't stop there. We will extend the CACSAP's reach to include early childhood centers, churches, businesses, and villages, creating a truly comprehensive and inclusive approach to waste management education. By engaging all segments of our society, we will foster a shared sense of ownership and responsibility for the health of our environment. In addition, the division has been engaging students in other educational programs that focus on many topics, including recycling and waste management. One such initiative is entitled My Only Earth, MOE project. The basic concept involves teachers in the early childhood care centers engaging students on environmental stewardship. The lessons are taught using a recurring character designed and manufactured from recycled materials, specifically to connect with children. Upcoming initiatives include the Rot-On Composting Initiative, Students will be educated on composting and how to develop their own simple compost projects. Students must also apply what they have learned in a practical sense. They must design and construct their own compost bins from recycled materials, compost cuttings, food waste, etc., and monitor the progress of the compost. Additionally, the students must demonstrate the use of the compost in school gardens or other gardens in their community. A mini greenhouse challenge for primary schools is also planned. This will require students to design a mini greenhouse. The design of the greenhouse must show creativity that depicts the core concept of the project. The participants will be required to use recycled and/or recyclable material in the construction of the greenhouse. While reinforcing the virtues of recycling, it is envisaged that the initiative will help to boost young persons' interest in agriculture and provide a viable option to raise funds to finance school projects, demonstrating the business end of agriculture. Madam Presiding Officer, as I've always been reiterating, agriculture is a science and a business. Recognizing the immense potential of our young people, we will also launch the Trash to Cash or Trash to Treasure competition in schools. This innovative program will challenge students to think creatively about waste, transforming discarded materials into valuable resources and nurturing an entrepreneurial spirit that aligns with our sustainability goals. By empowering our youth to become active participants in the solution, we lay the foundation for a generational shift in attitudes and practices. In parallel with these efforts, we will revitalize the iCare program in Tobago, forging robust partnerships with the private sector. Launched by the EMA in 2015, iCare sought to promote recycling and environmental stewardship nationwide. However, its impact in Tobago has been limited. We will collaborate closely with NGOs, government, and private enterprises to breathe new life into this initiative, tailoring it to our island's unique needs and challenges. In an effort to address growing waste management issues in Tobago and demonstrate the island's green credentials, the division, in collaboration with the Division of Health, Recycling, Waste and Logistics Limited and the EMA, continued their partnership over the last 2 years to institutionalize the habit of recycling across the island. This initiative involves the collection of plastic bottles, Tetra Paks, glass, cardboard, and aluminum cans, which are baled and shredded and shipped abroad for onward processing. In 2022, approximately 66,000 kilograms of plastic bottles, aluminum cans, Tetra Paks, cardboard, and glass bottles were collected. In 2023, total recyclables collected increased to 136,926 kilograms, representing an average of 11,411 kilograms per month. A total of 95,243 kilograms was processed and marketed, representing an average of 7,937 kilograms per month. At present, the program is being reviewed, but collection, processing, and marketing continues and is fully funded by the division. It is envisaged that the Reforestation Company will assume responsibility for a restructured program in the future and expand the program's reach. The task before us is monumental, but not insurmountable. With an estimated waste generation of 1.2 kilograms per person per day and a recycling rate of only 10%, we have significant room for improvement by implementing these initiatives and mobilizing the support of all Tobagonians. We aim to reduce our waste generation by 30% and increase our recycling rate to 40% within the next 5 years. These targets are ambitious, but they are achievable with the right combination of education, innovation, and collective action. Tobago, we need you. As we embark on this transformative journey, we must also address the immediate crisis at hand. The recent oil spill has not only devastated our coastline, but also exposed the vulnerabilities of our waste management system. We must act swiftly and decisively to contain the damage, clean up the affected areas, and prevent further contamination. This will require close coordination with our partners in the Tobago space and beyond, as well as the mobilization of resources and expertise from both the public and private sectors. Although the oil spill may have caused significant impact, particularly on our ecosystems along the coastline of Lambo, Lowlands, and Cove, the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and Sustainable Development is in collaboration with the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection and the Basel Convention Regional Center, BCRC, which is the executing agency. We have established and is in the process of meeting all statutory requirements to implement a comprehensive waste oil management system for Tobago that protects the environment while at the same time promoting business opportunities rooted in the reprocessing of used oil. Critically, the project involved the establishment of a wide collection network primarily consisting of garages and purpose-built reprocessing facilities to reprocess the oil, the used oil. The financial feasibility study was completed. It is expected that the facility will be installed and become operational within the vicinity of the Studley Park area, hopefully in the not too distant future. This project is also developed, designs were approved, and has received Executive Council approval with the potential to deliver sustainable socio-economic opportunities and environmental benefits to Tobagonians. Note carefully, the approximate cost of this project is $3,914,860, of which $3,509,860 would be provided by the Green Fund. However, the Tobago House of Assembly, through the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development, will execute the site preparation and other infrastructural works valued at approximately $405,000. But even as we grapple with numerous challenges, Madam Presiding Officer, we must not lose sight of the long-term goal to transform Tobago into a model of sustainable waste management, a shining example for the Caribbean and the world. By harnessing the power of education, innovation, and collaboration, we can create a cleaner, greener, and more prosperous future for ourselves and posterity. This is our moment to build the greatest little island on the planet, a place where every citizen takes pride in their environment and actively participates in its preservation. It is a vision that requires the commitment and cooperation of every member of this assembly, every community leader, every business owner, and every individual who calls Tobago home. So let us rise to this challenge with the determination and unity that have always defined the Tobagonian spirit. Let us work hand in hand to educate, innovate, and inspire change. The road ahead may be difficult, but I do not doubt that together we will prevail. In the words of the great environmental leader, Dr. Jane Goodall, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Today, let us choose to make a difference that will resonate through the ages, a difference that will make Tobago a beacon of sustainability, a difference that will make us all proud to call this island our home. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, honorable members, and fellow Tobagonians for your attention and commitment to this noble cause. Together, let us build the greatest little island on the planet, a more resilient Tobago. And let me just say to the minority council, take policy in you.
Hold back.
Members, who is the next speaker? Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit, you may now enter this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I would be a bit brief because I think the minority leader would have expressed a lot of views in relation to the motion. Thank you again for the opportunity to join the debate. Madam Presiding Officer, the motion would have outlined and highlighted a number of laws as well as international agreements between Trinidad and Tobago and other multilateral agencies. However, Madam Presiding Officer, I'm wondering whether or not the recital of these laws and agreements, how did they really contribute towards the motion, particularly when the member would have indicated in her winding up the need for not really following the rules and the law in the mere sense. So I was wondering the point of outlining all the laws and the rules in the recital of the motion. Additionally, I read and reread the motion, and with the presentation by the member, I am still at odds to try to understand what is intended by the motion, particularly with the fact that no real policy, Madam Presiding Officer, would have been outlined to guide the other divisions to align their policy with that of the overarching policy. Because one of the recitals speak to all divisions develop specific waste management. And is it that all divisions would develop this specific waste management policy in isolation of each division? What is the overarching policy that will feed into, that the divisions will use to guide or feed into the preparation of their own policy implementation, Madam Presiding Officer? And I was hoping that in the members' contribution and piloting of the motion, we could have heard some of the overarching policies. Is it that the Tobago House of Assembly is moving towards reducing bottles and like water bottles and probably going towards filter? Is it that the Tobago House of Assembly is working towards becoming paperless, so that the policies that come out of the divisions are in alignment with something? Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, in terms of the litter eradication program, I know there were some initiatives under the past administration coming out of the division of infrastructure at the time in relation to the Tobago Recycling Resource Initiative. And I'm wondering, how does that fit into what the Secretary intends to do? What is the status of this program? Additionally, there were community ambassadors and those who are really influential persons within the community that will try to encourage villagers to do the whole recycling and separating. We would have seen bins placed in different locations throughout our communities throughout Tobago. How does this project out of another division, how can it be aligned to what the Secretary wants to do, Madam Presiding Officer, and what is the status of those projects? The question remains, what is the policy of the division? And it is quite interesting, Madam Presiding Officer, that one of the laws that were included in the recital was the whole EMA and the Environmental EMA Act, but Environmental Management Act, Madam Presiding Officer. But based on the current posture and based on what we have seen in this administration and even in this House, when questions were asked in relation to the said Environmental Management Act. This administration seemed at the time that they did not have to adhere to that act. Several questions were asked, and I think both the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education indicated that based on the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the EMA Act does not apply, and we have seen where that has not been the case because the EMA would have applied for injunctions so that the THA can follow its act. So it's just quite interesting, Madam Presiding Officer, that in the recital we could see the quotation of the EMA Act, but we are seeing something different coming out of the administration in relation to abiding by laws, abiding with the laws of the land, in particular to the EMA Act. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, I would have hoped that before a motion such as this came to the House to resolve that resident commit to strategies of the THA, that some consultation would have taken place throughout communities in Tobago to inform, to sell, to share the ideas of the Tobago House of Assembly in relation to this motion, as well as to get the buy-in and to get the view. And I'm sure coming out of those consultations, we would have had additional views from the community, additional solutions to some of the problems in terms of litter eradication that the member would have described that is being seen in the communities. And similar, Madam Presiding Officer, in relation to corporate bodies, because the motion speaks to the fact of having a commitment of corporations for corporate social responsibility. And perhaps, Madam Presiding Officer, we probably should have taken a different approach where we educate our corporate entities, because the member would have spoken about her community and the issue that the community would have had with this resident or corporate or business person that was leaving waste by the community bin. The member also spoke to the fact that the garbage trucks that go around to Tobago, they are not necessary, they do not, or they are not intending to pick up the waste of businesses. And Madam Presiding Officer, by sharing some of this information, because I'm sure a lot of our corporate entities and our small business owners are not aware that the garbage trucks should not be collecting their garbage based on the information presented here today. So maybe sharing information, having some public consultation may help with encouraging the corporates in coming here and expecting and trying to mandate businesses to keep in line with whatever policy is being achieved. Additionally, the member in her piloting of the motion would have spoken to the fines of the Litter Act 1973, as well as some of the challenges in terms of the enforcement of the Litter Act in Tobago in particular. And Madam Presiding Officer, if the member could also, in her winding up, give us an idea, in spite of the challenges, what are some of the proposals or what is proposed for the enforcement of the law in light of all the challenges. So, Madam Presiding Officer, on this side, we are really seeking some clarity as to what the motion really wants to achieve, as well as some indication or overview as to what is the overarching policy that the divisions intend to feed into. So, Madam Presiding Officer, with these words, I want to thank you for the ability to contribute, and I do hope that the member could bring some light as she winds up.
Members, please remember, you can indicate your intention to speak. Assemblyman Zorisha Hackett, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and also permit me to, let me quote, Standing Order 42-7, except through your leave, Madam Presiding Officer, to be able to refer to some notes. It's a very critical motion, and I would like to maintain my position throughout. I would like to begin by, of course, as usual, thanking God and the electoral district of Bethesda-Leketo, which includes the homes of Adventia, Golden Lane and Woodlands, for granting me with this opportunity to stand and represent them in this august chamber. Madam Presiding Officer, before I attend to the matter at allow me to edify the minority leader who seems to not be aware that the Secretary of Education, Research and Technology is the line secretary of the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute. And it seems that our recent trip to the South Beach Wine and Food Festival in Miami has piqued his interest. I, however, urge the minority leader to focus his attention rather on the fact that the many doors this Secretary of Education, Research and Technology was able to open, doors that were there to be opened for 21 years, should be his focus, and I would rather him attend to that by his previous colleagues. But I digress, Madam Presiding Officer. Today, as we convene in this chamber, we are confronted with a critical motion aimed at safeguarding Tobago's environmental integrity and public health. This motion that addresses waste management, pollution control, and of course, community engagement stands as a testament to a shared commitment to a sustainable future for our island paradise. As Secretary of Education, I rise to lend my steadfast support to this motion as presented by the Secretary with responsibility for health, wellness, and social protection, as I recognize its profound implications for fostering a sustainable and environmentally conscious society for generations to come. Let us begin by acknowledging the legislative framework in place, including the Litter Act of 1973 and the EMA Act of 2000, which underscore dedication to combating littering and holding polluters accountable. However, we recognize that legislative measures alone are insufficient without proactive implementation and Trinidad and Tobago's participation in multinational environmental agreements further solidifies our commitment to global environmental stewardship, and it binds us to principles of waste management and pollution reduction. The designation of responsibilities within the THA Act highlights the interconnectedness of various divisions, emphasizing the need for an integrated approach to address waste management challenges. Management policies aligned with the initiatives of the Public Health Department, ensuring consistency and effectiveness in combating littering and promoting cleanliness here in Tobago. We recognize that community engagement is fundamental in the success of any environmental initiative, and this motion therefore calls for the commitment of Tobago residents to implement strategies for maintaining a clean environment. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, corporate entities do play a pivotal role in promoting environmental sustainability through corporate social responsibility initiatives and the call in support for cleaner Tobago economy. Excuse me, Madam Presiding Officer. The adoption of this motion signifies our collective commitment to safeguarding Tobago's natural beauty and, of course, promoting public health. By working together across divisions, engaging communities, and mobilizing corporate support, we can indeed realize a vision of Tobago that is clean, sustainable, and thriving for generations. Our wish life, which of course is education. The Division of Education, Research and Technology does play a paramount role in supporting this motion. It is no secret, Madam Presiding Officer, that a couple of our schools experienced their fair share of rodent infestation in recent time, and therefore a motion such as this one is of great import. Currently, our division, through the Curriculum Planning and Implementation Unit, is engaged in various initiatives aimed at promoting environmental consciousness and sustainable practices amongst our staff and students at our schools. These initiatives include educational campaigns aimed at raising awareness, programs on recycling and waste reduction, as is realized by our annual Plant Anything Besides in the Ground initiative. Here, creativity is promoted as students are encouraged to plant herbs, vegetables, and flowers in unusual items, including shoes, handbags, or anything or any other receptacle that can be prepared for planting. Moving forward, we aim to expand our efforts by implementing several key initiatives as follows. At the preschool level, our division will continue to implement age-appropriate programs that introduce our young ones to the concepts of environmental stewardship and waste management. Members, do you remember singing Bits of Paper? And if my voice was good, I would, but of course, you all can't pay for this voice today. Bits of paper, lying on the floor at the age of 3 or 4. Wasn't that in itself a call to action, encouraging students to quickly spring out of their chairs and assist in cleaning up their own mess? More of this is required as we utilize poetry, storytelling, arts and craft, and outdoor exploration that can therefore aid in cultivating a sense of appreciation and responsibility for the environment. In our primary schools, we will continue to integrate environmental education in the curriculum across various subjects, as will be expounded on later on in this presentation. This interdisciplinary approach will allow students to explore environmental issues from multiple perspectives and develop critical thinking skills. Additionally, extracurricular activities such as our eco clubs and community cleanup events within our schools' environment can further engage students in hands-on learning experiences. At our secondary level, TERTEC continues to offer specialized courses and activities that delve deeper into topics such as sustainable development, environmental policies, and green technology. By empowering our students with knowledge and skills to address environmental challenges, we are nurturing the next generation of beyond formal education, Madam Presiding Officer. TERTEC continues to reach out to the general public, and we are going to ramp up on that through our soon-to-be installed divisional town hall meetings across Tobago, because we understand the need for public education in the space. Through these various outreach efforts, which includes organizing community workshops, public lectures, and awareness campaigns on topics related to waste management, pollution prevention, and environmental conservation, we expect to make our mark here. Madam Presiding Officer, may I be offered a napkin, please? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, fresh. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Before you continue, Assemblyman, is the AC bothering?
Madam Presiding Officer, I'm actually not well. It's not the AC.
Should I turn off the AC?
Yes, please.
Okay. Officer, can you turn off the AC, please? Thanks.
Thank you.
You can continue.
Right. This outreach includes organizing community workshops, public lectures, and awareness campaigns in topics related to waste management, pollution prevention, and environmental conservation. It is also imperative that we collaborate with industry partners and, of course, corporate Tobago to provide students with opportunities for real-world application of their knowledge and to contribute to cutting-edge research in the field. Additionally, leveraging technology platforms such as social media and online resources can help disseminate information about waste management, pollution prevention, and environmental conservation to a wider audience and foster ongoing dialogue on environmental issues to a wider audience. Through our very own Tobago Information Technologies Limited, known to you as 211, acronym TITL, who are currently working assiduously on digital and technologies to support waste management efforts are also being developed. Pollution monitoring tools. It is TITL's mandate to collaborate with the IT departments of all and community outreach programs. In addition to the comprehensive education and outreach initiatives outlined above, I would like to emphasize the pivotal role that the Tobago-centric curriculum, and let me use this opportunity to announce that the members of this committee, which were nominated by you, Tobago, will be announced next week. It is this committee that will, of course, begin working quickly to enhance our curriculum, and this can be used as a tool to educate our students on the position of this motion. This Tobago-centric curriculum will serve as a dynamic tool for integrating environmental consciousness and responsible citizenship into the educational journey of Tobago students at all levels. Through the Tobago-centric curriculum, students will engage with locally relevant content, case studies, and experiential learning opportunities that will highlight the importance of waste management, pollution control, and environmental stewardship in Tobago. By fostering a deep connection to Tobago's natural environment and cultural heritage, the curriculum will empower students to become active agents of positive changes in their communities. Together with our education and awareness initiatives, the Tobago-centric curriculum will lay the foundation for a cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable future for Tobago. In support of this motion, our division will partner closely with several key divisions within the Tobago House of Assembly, and I'm going to expound on the ways we can do so. As it relates to the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection, our joint collaboration is aimed at promoting public health awareness campaigns, integrating waste management, and environmental stewardship. The Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and Sustainable Development, as expressed by the Secretary, has already embarked on promoting sustainable practices and environmentally conservative initiatives. The Secretary, with responsibility for this division, previously expressed that in an effort to enhance biodiversity conservation, sustainable land use planning, and environmental monitoring, that we have embarked on said partnership. Our partnership with the Division of Community Development, Youth Development, and Sport would result in us engaging in public consultations and community outreach programs, including youth initiatives focused on environmental education and empowerment. This collaboration will involve joint efforts to organize community cleanup campaigns, youth leadership training programs, and environmental awareness workshops. In relation to the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, DIRTEC will collaborate on initiatives to promote ecotourism through the development of eco-friendly In relation to the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, DIRTEC will collaborate on initiatives to promote ecotourism through the preservation of our tourist attractions and cultural heritage sites. It is through this division that we'll make a call for corporate social responsibility to ensure that the social impacts are not meted out to us as Tobagonians. In conclusion, Madam Presiding Officer, and I'm winding up because I really am not feeling well. The adoption of this motion marks a significant step forward in our collective responsibilities and efforts to safeguard Tobago's environment and public One second, Madam Presiding Officer. In conclusion, Madam Presiding Officer, the adoption of this motion marks a significant step forward in our collective efforts to safeguard Tobago's environment and to promote, of course, public health. Through collaboration, education, and community engagement, we can realize a vision of Tobago as a clean, sustainable, and thriving island for generations to come. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Dr. Faith B. Israel, you may now conclude this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And I would like to say a special thank you to my colleagues who have contributed.
Honorable members, this House is now suspended for 5 minutes.
Get ready. 2021-2025 session of the Tobago House of Assembly. Secretary in the Division of Health, Dr. Faith B. Israel, will lay a motion that will see all divisions develop specific waste management policies to align with those of the Public Health Department. This motion will also seek public support by asking residents and corporate entities to work alongside the Tobago House of Assembly to implement strategies to ensure the island remains clean. This Thursday, March 28 from 10 a.m., meet us inside the House, or you can tune in online. Either way, don't miss it. Get ready, Tobago. We are heading back to the House for the 20th sitting of the 2021-2025 session of the Tobago House of Assembly. Secretary in the Division of Health, Dr. Faith B. Israel, will lay a motion that will see all divisions develop specific waste management policies to align with those of the Public Health Department.
This motion will also seek public support by asking residents and corporate entities to work alongside the Tobago House of Assembly to implement strategies to ensure the island remains clean. This Thursday, March 28 from 10 a.m., meet us inside the House, or you can tune in online. Either way, don't miss it.
Natasha Charles Pantin. I am from Mason Hall and I am the Secretary of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development. Growing up in Mason Hall was like a very humble, natural experience. I grew up in farming, going to plant corn and peas with my father on the farm in Belmont. My father, he was the one that oriented me to, agriculture. And my mom, she was the disciplinarian. She was the one that, shaped me into who I am today. Teaching you those life skills, and I maintained that throughout my entire life. I began my career at the Eastern Caribbean Institute of Agriculture and Forestry, and then I went on to study ecological sciences and forestry at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and then I went on to study public health at the University of Liverpool in England. So all my life I've been very close to the earth. I enjoy everything that is natural. I grew up with one sibling. It was always me looking up to my sister, looking up to her for guidance as a young lady, and follow everything that she would do. But it was very nice having a sibling that, you know, you could relate to and, you know, have all those experiences being a woman. My favorite dish as an adult is crab and dumpling. Crab, dumpling and provision. And if you throw in some pigeon peas or callaloo, even better. The first meal I cooked as a young person was curry fish and dumpling. And my father left me, he went to the garden, he left me to prepare the meal. And I tried to remember everything that he did step by step. And the one thing I didn't do correctly was to squeeze out the coconut milk and use the milk. I actually used the entire coconut, grated it everything and then threw it into the fish. And I will be excused for that because I was 12 years old. And when he came back, he didn't scold me because it tasted good. It wasn't like it was an entire coconut, it was just a bit of coconut. And he said, you know, everything tastes good, you know, but it's the coconut milk you're supposed to use, not the coconut. My journey in politics so far, while it is rewarding, it is challenging. I am grateful for all the experiences, I'm grateful for all the highs and lows. Under the division, we would have rolled out a lot of initiatives. Even within the district, we would have tried our best to manage our limited resources to get things done. But for me personally, bringing out the best in others makes me feel that this entire journey was worth it. Bringing out the talents in the children that I work with under the Reading with Expression program, even with technical officers that were not empowered to do things, you know, differently. Just taking them along the journey of understanding that these things can be done and bringing out the best in them. I consider that to be the biggest achievement. Trying to make people comfortable within their own space first, and then moving on to bigger things within the community. I think it's a collective approach to everything, and so far, all of us would have decided that the district would need waste management structures. A lot of the community areas within the community are not well lit, so a lot of community members would have said they just need lights, they need lamps. We would have had deplorable roads, brace walls, drainage. People want to be comfortable in their own space to begin with. The Chief Secretary would have indicated that we have plans for the indoor sporting complex, and all these things are remarkable. It would get chilled this day. Natisha Charles Pantin. I am from Mason Hall, and I am the Secretary of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development.
Bro Colorhall, Mount Grace, to serve as leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you. Thank you. Assemblyman Dr. Phoebe Israel, you may continue and wrap up this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As I stand to wind up this debate, I wish to extend to my colleague speediest of recoveries, and I would like to say to her and to the entire team that we thank the entire team for all of the hard work that you all have been doing in the middle of all of the challenges, in the middle of everything. It's been a difficult year, at least, but this team has shown that we are able to stand strong. And we are able to do what is necessary. because we love Tobago. I thank her specifically for that. I also want to thank my other colleague for participating in the motion and for bringing really an answer to many of the questions that were so prematurely asked by those on the other side. The point of this motion, Madam Presiding Officer, is for all of us to recognize being a public health professional, being someone who comes with a wealth of knowledge on this specific topic, I took the decision to use actually a different approach and to speak to the hearts and minds of the average Tobagonian who honestly does not care about the nitty-gritty and the specific details and the things that are, of course, lodged in the policies and in the plans that sit within the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. But the aim is to ensure that we all understand that we are part of the solution. I would also like to indicate that I am apologizing to all of Tobago. We have not completed the restructuring of the LEP program, even though it started in, 2007. I sincerely apologize. We spent the history of Trinidad and Tobago, which was actually go through the entire island and sit there and listen to the congratulations, but also listen to the complaints. And we recognized that there were several recurring themes. So I know that the concept of consultation is one that sounds nice, but the fact is that this administration has actually spent more time speaking to the people of Tobago than the previous administration did and than they are doing in Trinidad at this point. So yes, when it comes to specific issues, we will continue having the conversations. We will continue listening to the people of Tobago, and we are here now because we had those conversations. There were questions and there was quite a bit of commentary about that styrofoam motion that was brought many, many years ago. But the members on the minority should actually be ashamed to even speak about that bill, to even speak about that motion, you know. Because long after that was done, the members of your organization were the ones who were at the helm of the THE to implement what was proposed on that day. And I am sure, Mr. Minority Leader, that you are not blaming my good self or my colleagues at that time for preventing your organization from implementing all of the things that were not implemented at that time following that motion. Again, we apologize for not being able to do it in 2 years on this side, when in fact it is something that your colleagues spoke about way before then. I am actually glad, Madam Presiding Officer, that the question about digitization came up, because it is one of the things that I did not speak about, and I don't think any of my other colleagues spoke about it. but it is critical as we move towards a paperless, which also helps with ensuring that our island is cleaner. And I am proud to indicate that that process has actually started already. As a matter of fact, the Executive Council is very close to having full digitized processes. Madam Presiding Officer, I know that the Assembly Legislature is also in the process of digitizing what we do here in the chambers. Even at my division, at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, we have started the process in the Public Health Department where we have already, for example, done the GPS tagging of our garbage trucks so we can identify where every single garbage truck is every second of the day to determine, and that is part of our monitoring process as we try to keep the island clean. And of course, in social protection, that process has also begun because the aim is to ensure that as we pull through all of our grants and support and so forth, that we use digital systems to do that instead. So I want to thank members on the other side for raising that issue, and it has given me an opportunity to highlight again the fact that we have been able to do in just what you said, 2.5 years, Madam Presiding Officer, 2 and a little bit years, while those who were there before us spent 2 decades and a year. And here we are. So thank you for that opportunity. The aim, Madam Presiding Officer, of this is simple. Everyone, from the elderly all the way to those who are in preschool, as long as you are conscious of your being, you have a part to play in this. And that is why we have already spoken about how our divisions can do little things, but those things together, when we interact with each other in meaningful ways, can bring about the kind of change that is going to be a long-term and sustainable change. You know, I've actually had to say before that one of the reasons why so many of these programs that sound so good when you read them off of YouTube and Google, they sound wonderful, but when you start implementing them, they don't work, because it does take doing the background work, doing the foundation, doing the education, doing all of those things, instead of just running out and jumping and saying, yes, we did this, and yes, we did that. And then because you just run out and jump out and say, yes, we did this, and yes, we did that, we now have to ask about programs that should have been long-term and sustainable. And members on the other side now need to ask about what is happening with those programs. Because when they were implemented back then, the idea of taking your time to make sure that we were doing the baby steps to get us to the point of long-term sustainability did not happen, which is why at this point, members of the minority, you could ask questions about this, all of these recycling programs that started and what happened to them. You should not be asking us at this point, members of the minority. You should have been asking your colleagues who did not ensure that the program was actually sustainable. So, here we are, asking all Tobagonians, asking those of us in the public system, and asking those of you in the private system for us to come together to truly make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. It is a simple motion. It is a motion that probably moves away from the kinds of motions we are used to. But it is a motion that if all of us who are in this room now, and if everyone who is in the hearing of my voice actually takes a little bit of time to figure out what their individual, their family, their community, their division, their office, their business, their whatever role is, and implement it, we can get to the point where Tobago truly is the greatest little island on the planet, and that we could realize that proverb, that thing that I certainly thought was a biblical principle, but discovered late last night it wasn't, that cleanliness is indeed next to godliness. And because of that, I am hoping that all members of this House, including those on the minority, see it wise to agree with this motion and for us to all work collectively together, Madam Presiding Officer, to ensure that we do create this greatest little island on the planet. I thank you.
Honorable members, the question put is, whereas the Litter Act 1973 aims to prevent and control littering in public spaces through the enforcement of laws and penalties, and the Environmental Management Act 2000 holds polluters accountable for the cost of their polluting activities. And whereas Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory to several multinational environmental agreements and treaties governing waste management to minimize pollution. And whereas the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly, Act 40 of 1996, designates areas of responsibility, including tourism, health services, environment, and community development. Be it resolved that all divisions develop division-specific waste management policies and plans that align to those of the Public Health Department of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And be it further resolved that the residents within the communities of Tobago, alongside the Tobago House of Assembly, commit to implementing strategies to ensure the island remains clean. And be it further resolved that corporate entities in Tobago be engaged in a strategic campaign for a cleaner Tobago through their commitment to corporate social responsibility and the economic development of a sustainable and environmentally safe Tobago economy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no.
No.
The ayes have it, motion carried. Clerk?
Motion for adjournment.
Madam Clerk?
Assemblyman Dr. Faith B. Israel, member for Belgarden, Glamorgan. How do you vote?
Proudly aye. Proudly I.
Got it. Assemblyman Natisha Charles Pantin, member for Belgarden Bacalet. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay, he's not there. Assemblyman Ian Pollard, member for Mason Hall Moriah. How do you vote?
Resoundingly aye.
Assemblyman Trevor James, member for Scarborough Mount Grace. How do you vote?
Aye.
Assemblyman Joel Sampson, member for Bonaccord Crown Point. How do you vote?
Aye.
Assemblyman Sonny Craig, member for Buku Mount Pleasant. How do you vote?
Aye.
Assemblyman Niall George, member for Plymouth Blackrock. How do you vote?
Aye.
Assemblyman Nigel Tate,
Aye.
member for Signal Hill Patience Hill.
Aye.
Councillor Tasha Boris, how do you vote?
Pellucidly aye.
Councillor Sertica Williams Orr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit, how do you vote?
No.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, member for Darrell Spring Wim, how do you vote?
No policy.
Madam Presiding Officer, based on the votes, we have 10 saying yes and 2 saying no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, motion carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
I beg to move that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question put is that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against, say no. The ayes have it. Honorable members, honorable members, this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed, and I want to wish each and every one of you a safe and enjoyable Easter. Have a good evening, members.
Tonight, breaking news coming in now. Authorities revealing they have recovered 2 of the bodies after the bridge collapse. And tonight, for the first time, the surveillance from the bridge itself and what it shows. Also breaking, we have just learned tonight, former vice presidential candidate Joe Lieberman has died. First tonight, the tragic headline just in from Baltimore. Search teams recovering the bodies of 2 workers on that bridge when it collapsed. The victims were still inside a red pickup truck. And tonight you will see that surveillance showing flashing lights believed to be from those workers, the road crew, just before impact. Also just moments ago tonight, we learned former Connecticut Senator and Vice Presidential candidate Joe Lieberman has died at the age of 82 after complications after a fall, what we've learned. The storms tonight, there are flood watches up right now from Florida all the way up to Boston. Bands of heavy rain moving up the East Coast. Rob Marciano timing it out. Breaking news tonight, a horrific scene unfolding in Rockford, Illinois. At least 4 people killed in a stabbing spree through a neighborhood. Several others badly injured, what police revealed just a short time ago. Tonight, disturbing allegations what the Utah women's basketball team allegedly endured as they traveled for a game in Idaho. The head coach says players were victims of racial hate crimes, racial slurs from men in pickup trucks speeding by multiple times. In New York City tonight, the first in the nation congestion pricing plan set to begin, charging drivers a $15 toll to enter Midtown Manhattan to reduce traffic and raise billions for mass transit and infrastructure. Drivers tonight sounding off. The race for the White House tonight with Donald Trump's daughter-in-law now running the Republican National Committee. ABC News confirming that potential employees are now being asked, was the 2020 election stolen? Do they believe the false claim from Donald Trump? Also developing the new images from inside Sean Diddy Combs' home in Los Angeles, the images TMZ has obtained amid this sweeping federal sex trafficking investigation, what we've learned. And right here tonight, the contestant on Wheel of Fortune who guessed the puzzle with one letter. Could you solve it? We'll show you.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a very busy Wednesday night. We are back from Baltimore this evening with several breaking stories as we come on the air this evening. Former Connecticut Senator and Vice Presidential candidate Joe Lieberman has died at 82 after a fall. John Carl on this in a moment. But we do begin tonight with the discovery. Search teams have now recovered the bodies of two workers who were on that Baltimore bridge when it collapsed. Their bodies found underwater, still inside a red pickup truck. Tonight, there was also news from the investigation. NTSB agents boarding the ship now, retrieving the data recorder, the ship's black box, and interviewing the crew still on board. And for the first time here tonight, the new images, a traffic camera on the bridge itself just before the accident. The ship slowly approaching from the right, those flashing lights believed to be the construction crew, the workers on that bridge. And then what came next? The 1.6-mile Francis Scott Key Bridge coming down almost entirely. Just extraordinary images to see. Tonight, that news just coming in, the discovery now of some of the bodies in that river. Gio Benitez leading us off from Baltimore tonight.
Tonight, authorities recovering two bodies from the river and searching for four people still missing after that catastrophic bridge collapse in Baltimore.
Divers located a red pickup truck submerged in approximately 25 feet of water in the area of the middle span of the bridge. Divers recovered two victims of this tragedy trapped within the vehicle.
Those victims identified as 35-year-old Alejandro Hernandez Fuentes and 26-year-old Dorlian Cabrera.
Today, we transitioned from search and rescue to recovery. We need to bring a sense of closure and comfort to the families.
Chilling new security camera video from that doomed bridge showing the final minutes before disaster. Those flashing lights on the right side of the Francis Scott Key Bridge believed to be a construction crew filling potholes early Tuesday. And in the water off to the right, the Dolly, that 95,000-ton cargo ship, the crew reported losing power and steering, issuing a mayday before slamming into the bridge. The camera cutting out, the bridge collapsing. 8 construction workers on that bridge plunging into the river, 2 surviving. Still missing and presumed dead, Miguel Luna, a father of 3 from El Salvador, and Minor Suazo Sandoval from Honduras, a father of 2. Sandoval's brother Martin saying he was the fundamental pillar of the family. Divers back in the chilly, murky waters today, also using underwater drones to search for the victims. And it's raining again now here in Baltimore. All day long, we've been seeing these weather conditions affecting those recovery efforts. And even underwater, it's very dangerous for the divers with all that mangled metal. For the first time today, federal investigators boarding that nearly 1,000-foot-long cargo ship, now reviewing the vessel's data recorders and interviewing crew members still on the ship, saying they are cooperating. The main focus tonight, why that ship suddenly lost power and control. Investigators looking at several possibilities, including whether contaminated fuel played a role.
We don't have a confirmed answer as to what exactly the power issue was. We know that the power issue connected and meant it was an inability for there to be proper steering and proper adjustments on the vessel, but we do not have any further details as of yet until a further investigation is completed.
That ship passing inspections in 2023. The Singapore Port Authority saying in a statement the ship experienced momentary loss of propulsion Tuesday and was unable to maintain the desired heading and collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And tonight, more praise for the authorities who, in the roughly 90 seconds between the ship's mayday call and the moment of impact, stopped traffic on the bridge.
Hold all traffic on the Key Bridge. There's a ship approaching, has just lost their steering.
Likely saving lives.
If not for several factors, including those responders' efforts, the mayday call, the maintenance closure that was already underway, and the time of day of this impact, the loss of life might have been in the dozens.
And David, just moments ago, the Coast Guard said that the ship was undergoing engine maintenance in the port before it lost power and crashed into the Key Bridge. David.
You'll continue to follow it for us. Gio Benitez again tonight. Gio, thank you. We have also just learned tonight that former Connecticut Senator and vice presidential candidate Joe Lieberman has died at 82 after complications from a fall. He was admired by colleagues on both sides of the aisle and often worked to find consensus in a polarized country. Here's our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
Joe Lieberman, who came within a few hundred votes in Florida of becoming the first Jewish vice president in American history, had a career that was defined by breaking barriers and breaking down party lines. He served 4 terms in the Senate representing his home state of Connecticut. A progressive on most domestic issues, but a hawk on foreign policy. Lieberman was one of the leading Democratic supporters of both wars in Iraq. In 2000, Al Gore tapped him to be his running mate, making Lieberman the first Jewish American nominated on a major party ticket. In the Senate, Lieberman struck up an alliance with Republican John McCain. Unafraid of defying fellow Democrats, he often irritated members of his own party, so much so that he lost the Democratic primary for his seat in 2006. But he came back to win anyway as an independent. He endorsed his friend John McCain for president in 2008, speaking at the Republican National Convention, and was even under serious consideration to be McCain's running mate.
Independent until the end, Lieberman was a founder of No Labels and active even in recent days in the efforts to come up with a bipartisan third-party ticket to challenge both Biden and Trump. Lieberman's family has put out a statement tonight praising his love of family, God, and America. He was 82 years old. David?
We are thinking of his family, and of course, so many can relate to complications after a fall, dying at just 82. And as you point out, John, admired by colleagues on both sides of the aisle. John, thank you. We're also tracking these major storms tonight. The East Coast bracing for several bands of heavy rain as it moves up the coast. Flood watches from Florida tonight all the way up through Boston. Several inches of rain expected along the coast, including Washington, D.C., New York, right into New England through Thursday. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano back with us tonight. Hey, Rob.
Hi, David. More rain and some snow for both coasts coming in. Here on the East Coast, we got flood watches up from Florida into North Carolina and up in through New England as well, including parts of Chesapeake Bay. Low developing along off the coast is going to amplify that rain throughout the day tomorrow, and it really increase it not only across North Carolina but into the Boston area, where we'll probably linger into Friday morning. Looking for 2 inches there, an inch here in New York City, but 3 to 4 inches locally across parts of the Mid-Atlantic. All right, those storms in the Pacific, you mentioned the first one coming into the Pacific Northwest tomorrow, and then on Saturday, storm number 2 swings into Southern California, and that is going to bring a widespread risk of seeing some flooding and mudslides through the weekend. David?
We'll track it right through the weekend with you, Rob. Thank you. We turn now to that breaking news from Rockford, Illinois tonight, 90 miles north and west of Chicago. The horrific scene unfolding right now. At least 4 people killed in a stabbing spree through a neighborhood, several others badly injured, and what police revealed just a short time ago. Here's ABC's Alex Perez tonight.
Tonight, at least 4 people are dead and 5 others injured after a man went on a stabbing spree in and around Rockford, Illinois, west of Chicago. Rockford police saying the first calls came in around 1:15 p.m., the suspect first confronting a woman in her home.
The young lady ran from him. She got some stab wounds in her hands and her face. She's currently at a hospital, and she is intubated. She is in serious condition.
The suspect attacking multiple people throughout the neighborhood, including a postal worker, before being apprehended by a sheriff's deputy. Authorities now trying to make sense of this horrific crime.
Words can't even express my thoughts right now.
And David, authorities say a Good Samaritan who was trying to fend off that suspect was also injured. Investigators now working to determine a motive in all of this. David?
Alex Perez with late reporting tonight. Alex, thank you. We're learning more this evening about the disturbing allegations, what the Utah women's basketball team allegedly endured as they traveled for a game in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The head coach says players were victims of racial hate crimes, racial slurs from men in pickup trucks speeding by multiple times. Here's ABC's Kana Whitworth.
Tonight, police investigating the racial harassment of the University of Utah women's basketball team as they were staying in Idaho for the NCAA tournament. Some players were walking to dinner in Coeur d'Alene last Thursday night when, according to a police report, 2 lifted pickups were revving their engines and speeding by. The report states the trucks turned around and yelled a racial slur towards the group, some of the members African American. Officials saying one of the trucks displayed a Confederate flag. The threatening behavior continued after the dinner as the team was followed back to their hotel.
The same perpetrator continuing the racial slurs while revving their engines, which we believe was a serious threat to the safety of those students.
The NCAA is saying they immediately worked to provide increased security for the team until they could be moved to a hotel 30 miles away in Spokane, Washington. Idaho's governor stating, "We fully reject racism in all its forms," and the mayor offering up an apology.
I offer my most sincere apology. We, all of us, stand with you. We embrace you.
And David, investigators are now speaking with the players that were impacted. The FBI is also in contact with local law enforcement. David?
All right, Kana Whitworth tonight. Thank you, Kana. And here in New York, the first in the nation congestion pricing plan set to begin soon, charging drivers a $15 toll to enter Midtown Manhattan. The plan aiming to reduce traffic in New York City and raise billions for mass transit and infrastructure. Tonight, drivers sounding off, and here's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, New York City becoming the first in the country to impose a fee for driving into the busy heart of Manhattan. Toll readers already installed around much of the city, ready to charge drivers $15 a day for traveling below 60th Street between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekends. Trucks will pay up to $36 daily, depending on size, and taxis and rideshare users will see a fee for each trip to, from, or within that zone.
New York has more traffic than any place in the United States, and now we're doing something about it.
The MTA says 700,000 vehicles enter this part of the city every weekday, and the new tolls will help curb congestion and possibly generate billions of dollars for improvements to mass transit. The plan makes some exemptions for buses, government, and emergency vehicles, and there are discounts for those who make less than $50,000 and for drivers already paying tolls at the tunnels. But for many New York City commuters, they're saying no thanks.
Another $15 just to get to work, which is just, it's absurd.
David, those U-toll readers are already installed behind me, but the plan still needs to be approved by the Federal Highway Administration. And there are several pending lawsuits in New York and New Jersey that could complicate implementation of this plan. But the MTA today is saying they fully expect the tolls to kick in by June. David.
We'll see Stephanie Ramos tonight. Thank you, Steph. Now to the race for the White House tonight with Donald Trump's daughter-in-law now running the Republican National Committee. ABC News confirming this evening that potential employees are now being asked, was the 2020 election stolen? The false claim from Donald Trump. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, with Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican National Committee complete, installing his own daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, to run the RNC, ABC News has learned that